What's your you don't see that everyday story? Story 1. On vacation in London, my wife and I were waiting for a train in a tube station. Two trains arrived at the station before ours showed up. As a native New Yorker, I was comforted to see that pigeons live in subway stations everywhere. The first train pulls into the station and the doors open. As people enter and exit the train, one pigeon flutters down from the ceiling, lands on the platform, and calmly walks onto the train like he's off to work or something. My wife and I laugh about this a little as the doors close and the train pulls away from the station. The second train pulls into the station, the doors open, and people shuffle out. After a moment, a different pigeon walks out of this train and then flutters up to the spot vacated by the first pigeon. Anyway, it seems like London pigeons have the tube pretty much figured out. Story 2. I had just pulled out of my office parking lot when a lady hit my rear passenger side with her SUV as she pulled out of a rail station parking lot. So we both pulled over at the Taco Cabana to do the typical fender bender rigmarole, but to my surprise, a pickup truck followed behind us. I don't think too much of it and get out to exchange info. As I approach her car, I notice she's avoiding my gaze completely. I'm standing there knocking on her window like, "What, lady?" And then a man gets out of the aforementioned truck. He demands to know what happened and why I hit her, to which I retort, "Excuse me, but who are you?" "And she hit me, are you fucking joking? Or are you blind?" I'm growing more livid by the second because I just want to go home. Out of nowhere, a van with a local Mexican restaurant's branding pulls up, and your man gets out and starts yelling at the pickup truck man. They seem to know each other. The woman in the SUV now locks her door. I heard her powder locks. I turned back to address the van man, and he's arguing with the pickup truck man. A security guard from the neighboring rail station is walking over, and as I'm flagging him over for help, van man heed BUTT's pickup truck man. Full on. I'm in total disbelief, and now the security guard is frantically running and jumping a hedge of bushes now. He comes and breaks up the fight. I'm not sure why, but it was only at this point that I feared for my safety, but I was also now deeply invested in this drama that was unfolding. It turns out the woman who hit me was having an affair with the pickup truck man, and they were having a rendezvous at the rail station parking lot. Van man is her husband, and he had just caught them in the act. Worst part is their teenage son was with him. Van man is practically giddy, telling me to contact him at all if I need a witness to the accident to get my car fixed, presumably so she can get slammed with a hefty fine or premium or whatever. So yeah, you just don't see a grown-ass man headbutt another grown-ass man in a Taco Cabana parking lot every day. Story 3. My very first day in New York City. I arrived at Newark and was getting a combination of bus/train to Penn Station. A family came running behind us towards the platform, a crazed redhead screaming. A voice behind her yelled, "Mindy, Mindy, you don't know where you're going." Then another voice yelled, "Where's Mindy going?" And Mindy finally replied, "There's only one train." During the bus ride portion of the journey, I saw police clearing up a crime scene of what looked like a mob hit. Shock outlines, bullet casings, body bags, crime scene tape. Although I am led to believe this can be seen every day. Finally, in Times Square, a man approached me, put his hands on my shoulders and asked, "Excuse me, sir, are you Jesus Christ?" What a city, eh? Story 4. I work security on the side. I feel like that could give you a different answer every so often. Watched a guy the other day going through boxes of men's shoes and sniffing them, looking for ones with a foot scent. When he found them, he'd get a little fidgety. Went to the back of the department with a few boxes and was looking around heavily. But there was a family and a bunch of kids around, and he left abruptly. No joke, the way he was acting and how he was positioning things. He was about to fuck a pair of Nikes. It was some wild shit. Watched a guy bust out of the store one time with about $1,300 in clothes and right into the side of his getaway vehicle, which then ran him the fuck over. Not ashamed to say, I laughed my ass off. He lived. People shitting, pissing, masturbating, domestic violence, robberies, marriage proposals from a cracked-out junkie, accidents. I've seen some shit. Story 5. My friend and I got drunk on bottomless mimosas and were walking to the boardwalk in San Diego. As we're going along, we walk past a group of people, and they turn and start clapping and cheering. We think, That's odd, and keep going. Another group of people offer us cupcakes, and being drunk, I take one and say thanks. The person says, thank you, all enthusiastically. Again, odd, but whatever. Yet another group comes up and a little girl asks if I want a sticker. Sure, why not? And she puts a sticker on my hand. It's pink and says, I'm a champ. We're beginning to wonder what's happening at this point and come up on a group of people with a banner playing music, handing out water, and people with cowbells, and they take our picture. We awkwardly cheered on our drunk walk through and saw the banner for a run-walk event raising money for cancer, and we'd inadvertently gotten on the route. It was an interesting series of events and was the third weirdest thing to happen that day. As we got closer, I stopped at a bathroom because I've drunk like 6 mimosas. I walk in and it's dark as fuck. There's a sink, a urinal, and then a stall. There's a bicycle leaning against the wall opposite the urinal. The stall door is closed, and there's music that sounds like someone playing Galaga coming from the stall. Bottomless mimosas are hitting, so whatever. As I'm peeing in this dimly lit bathroom, I notice there's a fucking circular hole cut in the partition between the urinal and the stall. Just as I'm realizing that I'm seeing the glory hole for the first time, the music pauses and it sounds like a tarp rustling. Someone has definitely stopped what they were doing, and I'm assuming they're looking at my dick in hand. After what feels like the longest piss of my life, I wash my hands and walk out. Second weirdest thing of the day. We're almost to the boardwalk, and I see someone in the distance hopping around. That's strange, but we keep on walking. We get closer and see it's a person in a dog costume. It's hot as fuck, but whatever. We come around a turn, and there's an entire field of them in all sorts of different costumes hopping around, crawling, and standing. Very bizarre, and the first time I'd actually seen furries. The funniest thing I've ever seen, and I wish I could find the picture I took. But there was an older couple with an actual pug on a leash that was just standing there fucking staring at them. That dog had to be so confused. Now, Story 6. A few years ago, while visiting family in the south of Spain, I live in the States, I was out at a bar with my cousin. His girlfriend's family owned the bar, and it was small but packed. I went upstairs to the only bathroom to go pee. Opened the unlocked door and walked in on a FM threesome in full swing. Ass and tits, everything now. Immediately tried to cover my eyes while backing out the door and yelling, Lo siento, lo siento. My cousin, his girlfriend, and her mom ran up and promptly removed them. But I had zero desire to touch anything in the bathroom after that now. This was also the first night I ever tried absinthe, and skinny dipped in the Mediterranean for the first time. It was a solid night. Story 7. This is probably a bit lame for you guys, but here it is. On a completely still day, with basically no wind at all, I was looking up into a tree at the end of a branch where only one leaf remained. I was humorously thinking that's the toughest leaf, still clinging on, up high gazing down at the bodies of his fallen comrades. What a champion. At that time this leaf fell, and I watched it slowly drift to the ground. I immediately thought that what I had just witnessed was extremely profound. That last defiant soldier finally accepts its inevitable fate and drifts off to eternity. Pardon the pun, but I know this sentiment is quite sappy. I imagine how much more powerful it would be to see the last leaf of an entire tree fall off instead of the last leaf of a particular branch. This was about 8 years ago, and I still remember it vividly. So there you go. That's my story. I believe it fits into the category of something you don't see every day. Story 8. When I first moved into my place a few years ago, I went out for a smoke at around 11 p.m., letting my dog for his last pee. It was pitch black outside, and the only visible light was a few street lamps in my hallway. So I was standing in my front garden enjoying the silence, my last few puffs on my cigarette, and my dog has gone inside already. Then I hear this faint clip-clopping noise, and I'm like, "Daffik is that noise?" So I listened as it got louder and closer, then it stopped. And a massive horse pops his head around my front gate right in front of me, and holy shit, when I tell you I almost screamed. Not what I was expecting to see. So this huge horse, no rider, just stares at me for like a full 20 seconds. Then along came his buddy, another massive Aoristi. So they were both kinda looking at me like I had something of theirs, and I don't have much experience with horses, so I kinda just went, good evening." And with that, they just snorted and clopped away. Turns out they had escaped from a farm up the road from me and had decided to take a late-night stroll. I watched for the next hour, giggling to myself as it took 5 police cars to catch them and return them home. You don't see that every day. Story 9. Story of my friend is that she is a personal cook, as in she cooks for these families at their place with an hourly charge. Needless to say, there's an economic difference between the employee and the employer. As she will be in the house for a couple of hours, she has seen all kinds of people. There are people who are always suspicious of her due to her humble background. Some are constantly watching her while she is there, making sure she doesn't steal anything. There was one family who refused to let her eat or drink anything in the house, yes, including water. And there was a family who straight up fired her at the start of the pandemic due to fears about her Asian origin. Fucking stupid people. Anyway, she was recently unwell from gastric issues. She often skips meals in the morning and gets late for work. She has 2 school-going kids, and it gets difficult for her to manage time for herself after their breakfast and packing lunch. Many days like this, and now it's an ulcer. She couldn't go to work for 3 days. She told me when she went to a particular house on the 4th day, they only asked her about her health and well-being, but also gave her food in their fridge. Told her to use the fridge anytime she needs, and if that she can cook something for herself and eat while she's making food for them. They told her to take a few days off as she hadn't recovered completely, and they wouldn't cut her pay. She told me that she has worked with a lot of high-profile clients, but this wasn't something she comes across every day. Story 10. Driving home a few years ago, stuck in slow-moving traffic on the 42 motorway coming around Birmingham. Probably doing about 20-30 miles per hour on my side. Looked to my right at the other side of the motorway. Saw a lad running down the hard shoulder. Though that's a little weird. Looked behind him to see his car on fire rolling after him. Car rolled all the way across 3 carriageways of the southbound side and hit the central barrier about 4 cars behind me. Other driving home stories on them 5. Passed a truck that looked like Optimus Prime. Thought cool, someone's bought an American-style truck and done a custom paint job. Then a few cars in front passed a Bumblebee, and then passed the American police car Transformer. They must have been driving up to some promo, but it was awesome to break the monotony of my commute home to see 3 Transformers. Story 11. Oh, I have a fun one that happened like a month ago. Driving home from work down the interstate. I'm behind this truck in the fast lane with one of those home gyms in the back. Now let me preface this by saying from where we got on to the next exit is about 12 miles. So we are just getting up to speed, about 60 to 65 mph. And I see this thing start tilting side to side and realize they didn't both strap the damn thing down. It's just sitting in the back on his truck, and it's right in the back of the bed, against the tailgate. So I slowed way down and was trying to change lanes, and then I watched in slow motion as they hit a small bump in the road, and this big hunk of metal started falling over the tailgate. Luckily, I was far enough back to slow down and not hit it. They drove this thing easily a half a mile before the last piece that was holding it fell off, and they realized they had lost it. I was lucky not to get hit by it and get around them without causing an accident behind me. Oh, when I drove back there the next morning, it was sitting on the side of the road. Can't make this shit up, lols. Story 12. Oak. I was in a Chinese restaurant in London. It had been fairly busy, but by the end of my meal with my girlfriend, the place had emptied apart from our table and one other, and of course, like many people, the other table hadn't noticed the atmosphere and gone quiet, and were speaking quite loudly still. The first thing I heard when we started to speak in a quieter tone was, it was one of those days where you are on and off, UN helicopters all day. It was said in the sort of tone that you might say you saw a friend in town, just a totally everyday sort of tone, as if it really was mundane and average for them. I suspected at the time they might be journalists, but I wasn't in a position to get a good look at them to see if they were TV journalists or not.